Boy, it's been a long time since I got my hands on a Lenovo Legion. I really wanted to test something different from what I've been using lately, and I think the word different really suits the new Legion 16i-AX7 I recently got for reviewing. It's a powerful toy, I'm not gonna lie, few laptops can compete with it. Intel Core i9 12900HX, 32GB of DDR5 RAM, RTX 3080 Ti, 4K display with 165Hz, staggering, same as the price. If you're looking for a laptop that will outclass everything else on the market right now, you can't help but throw Lenovo's top of the line on your list. And I'll explain why in this video. If I were to compare the design of this Lenovo Legion to anything, then I'd say it's the iPhone of laptops. Yeah, I know there are plenty of MacBooks out there, but my point is that this laptop is tank material. 6 pounds / 2.6 kilos doesn't seem like much till you pick it up. It feels very different from other laptops because this one is dense, compact and very sturdy. That feeling is also provided by the case material, which is an aluminum alloy. And it's not only the all-metal chassis that catches the eye, but the build of this laptop is also very interesting. The body, the bottom part, is massive and the panel hinges are not placed on the edge as on other laptops, but rather further in. Thanks to the placement and shape of the hinges, the panel can flip open 180 degrees, so extra points for versatility. Very interesting, the screen has a protrusion in the camera area, which incidentally is 1080p, and this higher area makes the laptop easy to open with one hand. As soon as I lifted the lid, I awarded a few more points for the ergonomics. The keyboard is streamlined, has numpad, the arrow keys are separated from the rest, and the on-off button is centrally placed outside the keyboard and looks great. The touchpad is large enough, it's also nice to touch as the rest of the laptop, and the clicks aren't exactly noisy. But once you fire up this Legion, so much for that nice and quiet thing. After all, we're talking about a gaming laptop, so it's raining RGB. The keys are individually lit, so you can set a whole host of effects, but in addition to the keyboard, the laptop also has to offer other RGB illuminated areas. A strip that starts at the sides and continues along the front edge of the laptop, and an RGB lit area placed on each of the cooling system grills. And here's the interesting part. Most of this RGB is not an eye burner because it's not directly visible. The lights melt into the table or surface the laptop is placed on, creating an interesting ambience without being intrusive. A couple of other nice lighting details caught my eye. The logo on the back is RGB lit, the port icons on the back of the laptop are also lit, and the power button has a ring around it that changes color depending on the performance profile you choose. Blue for silent, white for balanced, red for performance. So I take my eyes off the lights to look at other lights. The screen is 16 inches and has a resolution of 2560 by 1600. The fact that it's matte certainly helps cut down reflections, but the brightness is usually hindered on matte screens. We'll see how it performs in tests, but until then I'll also mention that the bezel is extremely thin, except in the camera area where, as I said, there's this bump. The two speakers are located above the keyboard under a very handsome grid on each side of the power button. Connectivity-wise, we have plenty to show off. 4 USB-C ports, of which 2 are also Thunderbolt 4, 2 more USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports, an 8K with 60Hz capable HDMI port, 1 Ethernet port, 1 audio jack for headphones and microphone, and the charging port. The ports are ideally placed. On the left we have 2 USB-Cs, on the right another USB-C, the jack and the switch for the camera, which disables it at hardware level. Everything else can be found on the back of the laptop. The cooling system seems very capable. It's made up of 2 fans that draw air from underneath the laptop and vent it out the sides and back. Rubber feet raise the laptop a few millimeters so that the fans have room to pull air. Oh, one more thing. The hot air doesn't get into the screen area, which is great. The 300 watts charger is downright gigantic. It has its reasons too, with a CPU pulling up to 125 watts at full load and a GPU that sucks 175, the 20 centimeters long and 2.5 thick power brick is borderline. Of course, this will affect mobility, but if you need to, you can also charge the laptop via one of the USB-C ports. Overall, I really like this Legion's design. It's low profile if that's what you want, flashy if RGB is your go-to, but all in all it's very well built thanks to some of the best materials. If there's one not so cool thing about this laptop is that the keys get a bit wobbly when you press them and they sometimes make a clanky noise. But beyond all these little niggles, it deserves at least a 9.5 out of 10 in this field, meaning it's almost perfect. The model we tested is downright insane hardware-wise. It comes with an Intel Core i9 12900HX CPU, an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3080 Ti with 16GB GDDR6 VRAM memory and 175 watts TGP, 32GB DDR5 4800 RAM, 1TB NVMe SSD from Micron, 2560 by 1600 IPS display with a maximum refresh rate of 165 Hz, and I guess you can't really go much higher on specs. The screen seems to be the weaker part of the configuration though. I say weaker because the screen by itself is by no means weak. The maximum brightness specified by the manufacturer is 500 nits, and from my measurements the value is even higher, around 520 nits. That's a decent value, there won't be any problems even in brightly lit environments, especially since the screen is matte. Color rendition isn't groundbreaking though, as the screen gets 100% coverage only on the sRGB spectrum. An OLED or a mini LED panel would have been great, but we have a simple IPS, which again on any laptop would have been great, but on this Legion it's just not on par with the other components. Well, we could also admit that gaming laptops in general don't excel at screen accuracy, because that's not what they are about. They are not laptops geared towards content creators or colorists. Frequency matters more here, and of that we have plenty. Getting back to this Legion's performance, very few laptops can keep up with it. I can only think of ROG Strix Car 17 SE, which might be a competition with its Intel Core i9 12950HX CPU, but on the GPU side you really don't have anything better to throw in at the moment. Actually, let's do a little comparison. The Scar is bigger, so theoretically it has the edge of its cooling system, but that doesn't mean this Legion sucks at cooling. On the contrary. So let the fight begin. We start as usual with applications that stress the CPU. Cinebench R20 does a great job at this with its single-core and multi-core tests. Here are the results. 8566 in multi-core and a formidable 729 in single-core. We move on to a more all-in-one test which calls for the whole system. Of course, we're talking about the venerable 3D Mark, where the Legion scored a sky-high 13,619 points overall. If we have a look at the Scar 17 SE with the superior CPU, which scored 13,532 overall, we can tell Lenovo knows what it's doing. However, I won't dwell more on the performance side in synthetic tests, because obviously you don't play 3D Mark. What you do play on this laptop, however, is definitely Cyberpunk 2077. So let's do the goddamn job right and play it at native resolution with the Ray Tracing Ultra preset, right? Depending on the area, the frame rate varied between 30 and 60 frames per second, but changing the DLSS setting to performance noticeably increased that performance, with the game rarely dropping below 50 FPS. In Spider-Man Remastered, the experience was even smoother. The frame rate reached over 110 FPS in some areas and never dropped under 60. That's with settings on high. For a resolution above 1440p, that is quite reasonable. The last game I ran was Metro Exodus, where the laptop performed just as fine. On extreme settings, at native resolution, I got an average of 35 FPS with a minimum of 22. With the Ultra preset, the values were 53 and 32 FPS respectively, and on high I got 67 FPS average and 40 minimum. But let's talk a bit about temperatures as well. Although the cooling system seems quite efficient and vigorous, it fails to fully tame the i9 CPU, just as I expected. And if the 3080 Ti stays at an acceptable 84 degrees in extended gaming sessions, the CPU goes into the 100s. Obviously, upon reaching this threshold, the processor's frequency drops, reaching somewhere around 2800 MHz compared to 5000 MHz in boost and 2300 MHz at base. That means it stays above the base frequency, but not by much. The temperature drops to 89-90 degrees, but at the cost of performance. On the whole, the Lenovo Legion 16IAX7 has very good specs and the performance is top-notch, but in long gaming sessions it is limited by the CPU's heat output. Unfortunately, pretty much all laptops in this class have temperature issues, and no matter how cleverly designed the cooling systems are, there's not much you can do when you've got a molten core of a planet in a still small case. In this respect, it gets an 8 out of 10 from me. I think by now you've already figured out that I really dig this laptop's look. Aluminum, RGB all the way, not to mention the performance. What delights me even more though is the attention to detail. take a look at this. The power button with variable illumination depending on the profile, the switch for turning on and off the camera, and the fact that pressing the FN key leaves lit only the keys that have an effect when pressed. The aluminum chassis feels great to the touch, sure, that is until you realize that aluminum transfers heat better than any plastic. Whoops, the result? The whole laptop heats up when you play, including parts of it that on other laptops stay cool, like the arrow keys area. This can get unpleasant if you don't use a separate keyboard. Plus, when set to performance mode, available by pressing the FN and Q key combination, it gets noisy. The display, while not the best in class, is very good for gaming. It doesn't have the response times of an OLED, nor an astronomical refresh rate, but I find that for most users it's absolutely sufficient. In terms of sound, we're not talking about any wow solutions, as the laptop only has two speakers called fancy super linear speakers, but they do a decent job for their size. However, I'm thinking that on such a purebred gaming laptop, you'll be using headphones anyway. The webcam is decent, though not Windows Hello compatible. In good light it shot significantly better than the 720p potatoes present on other so-called top laptops, and it also has two microphones that do their job reasonably well. The battery has the maximum capacity available on a laptop, 99.99 watt-hour, but that doesn't mean you'll have much gaming battery life. This Lenovo won't last you more than an hour of wireless gaming, though it's better when you're working on it or watching movies, so the battery lasts somewhere around 4 or 5 hours in the latter scenarios. A decent amount for what bulky hardware it has to keep on running. Well, at least with the 300 watts big-ass charger, the battery charges in just over an hour, 72 minutes to be more precise. To wrap this up, I'd give it an 8.5 for user experience. It bothers me that the laptop heats up even in the keys area, and the noise the fans make gets annoying after a while. Secondly, if I had to choose, I would rather go for the i9 12800HX configuration, even if we are talking about a slightly less powerful CPU than the one in the present configuration. Given that the number of cores and threads is the same and the cache is slightly smaller, I don't expect the performance differences between the two processors to be significant, especially since the 12900HX can't take advantage of the higher frequencies it can reach for too long. But anyone who will get their hands on this Legion, regardless of the hardware, will appreciate the different design and solid construction, very good performance and attention to detail. I can easily vouch it will last you for years to come, even if even more powerful monsters might appear in the meantime. This was today's Beast, and I must admit it has been a pleasure testing this Legion, especially since many people in the comments asked for Legion. Of course, I don't know if you meant exactly this expensive yet spectacular model. Either way, thank you guys for watching, and if you want more, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any of our future videos.